Hello students, welcome to yet another interesting class. In this lesson, we shall be learning another topic called cell. Cell as a living unit. We've all been hearing what cell is. So what do you understand by the word cell? So cell is said to be the smallest bit of living matter that can exist independently. That is, in this aspect of cell, they can exist singly or they can exist on their own. So Dix talks about the aspect of unicellular organisms. We understand uni is what? One. Cellular is cell. So this talks about in the aspect of an organism possessing just one cell. That is, a cell can exist independently on their own, and when they exist independently on their own, they exhibit all the characteristics or the biology of living things, which are Mr. Niger D. So that is the aspect of cell. So cell is said to be what? The basic unit of life. So every living organism, either the unicellular organism or the multicellular organism, their basic unit is referred to as cell. Even in the example of human beings, the basic unit, the smallest unit of human being is what? The cell. Then we now talk about the definition of cell. So cell is said to be the smallest unit that is capable of performing life functions. And what are the life functions? That talk about what? The characteristics of living things, which are nutrition, respiration, movement, irritability, adaptability, as many as you could mention, which is what Mr. Niger D, the characteristics of living. So a single cell can what? Have the ability to perform all these life processes. Then in this aspect of cell, they say that cell can exhibit varieties of shapes and size. So one of the shape of a cell can either be a round shape, a square shape, a rectangular shape, a star shape, just like what we have in the diagram we have here in the sex cell, which have a what? A circular shape. We also have a blood cell, we have a what? A circular shape. We also have the flat cell, they have also the what? The circular shape. And also in the aspect of the epithelial cell, which is found in the skin. So these one, all they are what? They are square in shape. And we also have the nervous cell, which is what? Rectangular in shape. And we have the bone cell, which is like a what? Like a star shape. So that talks about what? The shape of different cells. And it is also said that cell exhibit varieties of size. So from the smallest, which is what? The bacterial cell, which is just 1 micrometer. So and that one can only be seen through a powerful microscope. So that is the smallest size of a cell. And then we have the largest size, which is the ostrich egg, which is 100 millimeter. So Dix talks about what? The aspect of the size of a cell. Then we talk about the cell theories. So when we talk about cell theories, we are saying that even though we have cell, they are backed up by several theories. So about 300 years ago, we have this scientist called Robert Hooke. So he's the father of what? Of cell. So this cell theory is backed up by 5 theories. So the first theory says that all organisms are made up of one or more cells. So that is the word, the first theory of cell. That all organisms that they are found in nature, they are made up of what? One or more cells. So when you talk about one cell, that's not talk about what? Unicellular organisms. But in the aspect of more cells, that's when we talk about what? the multicellular organism. So that is theory 1, which says all organisms are made up of one or more cells. So theory 2, it also talks about that all existing cells come from the reproduction of pre-existing cells. That is, cells evolve from one another due to what? Reproduction, either by binary fission or by binary fusion. So a new cell is formed from a pre-existing cell, which is the what? The second theory of cell. And the third theory talks about that cell contains hereditary information in their DNA. And remember we talk about DNA, it talks about what? Deoxyribonucleic acid, which is contained in the chromosome of every organism. So this DNA, it has what? The cell contains hereditary information and this information, they are now passed to new cells by cell division. So it is passed on from parent to offspring. Are we together? So this is the what? The third theory of cell, which says that cells contain hereditary information in their DNA, and this information is passed from parent to offspring by cell division. And the fourth theory is the theory that states that cell is the structural and functional unit of all living organisms. That is, we can say that the cell is what? The basic organization unit of life. So it is the structural and the functional unit of all living organisms. So every living organism in nature, they have their structural and functional units as the cell. Altogether, so that is the what? The fourth theory of cell. And the fifth theory is a theory that deals with what? The chemical composition, and it says that all cells have the same basic chemical composition. All cells, either in unicellular organisms or multicellular organisms, they have the same basic chemical composition. So these are the 5 cell theories that back up cell. And then we also talk about forms in which living cells exist. Living cells, they exist in different forms. So this aspect will help us to know which the forms which living cell exist. So the first one, we talk about unicellular organisms. So cell can exist as unicellular organism. Remember we talk about unicellular organism, uni is one, cellular means what? Cell. So unicellular organism talks about organism that possess only one cell. Then we look at the examples. The first example here we have is amoeba. Amoeba are unicellular organisms and they exist singly. They exist independently as a whole entity. Are we together? So the first one is what? Is amoeba. And the second one is paramecium. So in this aspect of paramecium, they are also unicellular organisms that lives independently on their own. So both amoeba and paramecium, they are animal-like protists, which are what? Which are single-celled. So amoeba is an animal, paramecium also is an animal, and they are unicellular organisms that exist singly on their own. And then we also have Chlamydomonas. Chlamydomonas, they are also unicellular organisms, but Chlamydomonas, they are plant-like. Altogether, so Chlamydomonas are what? They are plant-like, Unlike in amoeba and paramecium, in which they are animal-like, Chlamydomonas, they are plant-like, and they are also unicellular organisms. That is, they possess only one cell, and they can exhibit all the characteristics or the biology of living things. So these are what the first form in which cell exists, which is what unicellular organisms. Then we move on to the next one, which is simple multicellular organisms. So when we talk about the simple multicellular organism, the first one we talk there is they exist in colony. When we say in colony, that is, these are aggregate of organisms, unicellular organisms, that they are now being encapsulated in what? In a single cell. Example there we talk about is volvus. So volvus consists of millions of Chlamydomonas. So, but these Chlamydomonas, when they now exist in cluster or in bunch or in colony, they are called volvus. Altogether, so that talks about the fact that the aggregate of millions of Chlamydomonas forms the volvus. So that's existing in colony. And when we talk about those that exist in filaments, we have the Spirogyra. The Spirogyra, they are aquatic plants that are multicellular in nature. They come together to form what? To form a filament. And another one there we have is the Hydra. Hydra, they are also multicellular cell that exist in filaments. And then we now talk about the differences between colonial and filamentous organisms. When we talk about colonial, these are organisms that exist in colony, just as we talk about volvus. And we talk about filamentous, these are organisms that exist in what? In filaments. Example is talk about what? The Spirogyra. So what are the differences between colonial organism and filamentous organism? The first one is colonial organism is a group individual organism with a close dependent relationship with other organisms. That is, they depend on each other. So in a colony, the organism inside the colony, they depend on each other. But in filamentous organism, the organism that form a filamentous growth. So that's one. And the second one is colonial organism form a spherical mass of cell, just like what was displayed when we are explaining the aspect of volvus. So they are spherical mass of cell. But in filamentous organism, they form an array of cells with an end-to-end arrangement. So if you take a critical look at the shape, at the structure of a Spirogyra, see that they are arranged end to end. So that's the second one. And the third one is that colonial organism is as a result of multiple cell division by mitosis. So the cell continually divide mitotically to result into what? The production of a new cell within the colony. And under the filamentous organism is as a result of what? Binary fission. Binary fission talks about what? Division into two. So this filamentous organism is also binary fission. And we also have that colonial organisms, they have a cell that what? Their cell lack intercellular cell wall. That is, within the cell, inside the volvus, they do not have intercellular cell wall. Altogether, so they lack what? Intercellular cell wall. But in filamentous organism, they possess intercellular cell wall because it is an aggregate of what? Of different filamentous organisms. So each of these filamentous organisms, they have their what? They have their cell, which help the filamentous organisms to process what? Intercellular cell wall. And lastly, we also say that colonial organism cell lack intercellular cell wall, which example we have is volvulus and or spongy, etc. And also example of filamentous organism. Then now talk about what? Spirogyra. We talk about hydra, etc. I hope you've learned a lot from this lesson. So we see in our next class. Bye for now.